Breaking news, the alleged CEO killer, Luigi Mangione.
We're learning more information about the assassin behind the murder.
Being reported that the man accused of shooting a healthcare insurance CEO
yesterday, alleged assassin Luigi Mangione had this outburst.
My earnest appeal to the conscious with the world that has grown too comfortable with moral contradictions. Let the cost of my sacrifice be not in vain. Let it serve to ignite a transformative discussion and, more importantly, real action. Okay. Holy I have so much to say. My brain goes a million places.
Cuffs as an insult to the intelligence of the American people and the living experience.
Hello, folks. What I have here is the actual manifesto of Luigi Mangione. If you don't know what happened, he's the dude that assassinated the CEO of United Healthcare recently. It's very tragic, and my heart goes out to the family of the CEO of UHC. Many of you know that I disdain for the current healthcare system. This whole thing has been interesting for me to watch and learn because I don't condone what he did, and I want to make that clear. What he was fighting for is something that I very much align with. My sources tell me that this is the actual manifesto. Just wanted to share it with you in case you haven't had a chance to see it yourself. Healthcare and its victims, Luigi Mangione, December 3rd, 2024. In this era of towering skyscrapers, artificial intelligence humming quietly through hospital corridors, and the endless litany of self-congratulation over the triumphs of medical science, I find myself compelled to break my silence. Our civilization boasts of its healthcare systems as if they were not only the apex of scientific achievement, but also as a paragon of human morality. Yet I stand here, pen in hand, seething with indignation, filled with profound sadness. I must speak the truth. Our modern healthcare system, especially in this country, is a cathedral built on sand, beautiful in its architectural concepts, but rotten at the foundation, a monument to hypocrisy and greed. Do not mistake my words as those of a lunatic or a lone fanatic. I've observed long and hard, meticulously compiling evidence, listening to the cries of the afflicted, and studying carefully the machinery of oppression that masquerades under the guise of healing. To some, I may appear as an isolated voice, an aberration within a culture hypnotized by the glow of technological progress. But I know there are countless others who share my despair, who have looked with aching hearts upon loved ones left untreated, patients bankrupt by basic therapies, researchers stifled by corporate interests, and communities abandoned by hospitals that deem their existence not profitable. My decision to articulate this scathing condemnation arises not from my hatred of humanity, but from a profound love for what humans could be if we only tore away the veil. Oh, fuck. Just... Woo! Damn, homeboy is a good writer too. Jesus. I wonder how much time he put into this. If he just wrote this on the fly, or is this something that he had prepared for quite some time? I would imagine, I really don't know. I haven't studied crazy acts of individuals who do crazy things like assassinate people, but there's absolutely something to be said about some of the statements that he's making. There are massive problems in the healthcare system. Humanity is powers that be. Whoever it is that makes those decisions are portraying a narrative. There is a narrative that they want us to believe. Yet at the same time, there's something else happening. And if you're not familiar with healthcare, if you've never experienced it but yourself, as a clinic owner myself for the past decade, and many of you individuals who have had healthcare issues, that's also business owners in the healthcare space, we get screwed inside and out by healthcare insurance companies. The fact that they profit is a huge problem and makes no sense because there's no way to avoid corporate greed when their profit margin is dependent upon the collections of money for their premiums while not paying for the medical procedures people need. The illusion of care. We have long been told to trust the medical establishment, to believe that doctors and nurses with their stethoscopes and white coats stand on paragons of virtue. Indeed, many individual practitioners do sincerely devote their lives to healing the sick, but individuals alone, no matter how compassionate, struggle within an institutional framework that undermines their noblest intentions at every turn. My gosh, that's deep. I know a lot of practitioners themselves are blinded by the very system that they're part of, and it's difficult for them to think that they're working for something with ulterior motives. Healthcare as it currently stands is not designed to keep people healthy. It is designed to maintain a perpetual market for healthcare services, pharmaceuticals, and insurance policies. Our society brandishes statistics, improved survival rates for certain cancers, the advent for robotic surgeries, targeted gene therapies, and so forth. Yet behind these numbers, carefully chosen by public relations departments and government spokesperson, lurks a grim truth. The overall metrics of health, infant mortality rates, maternal health outcomes, life expectancy compared to others industrialized nations tells a story of persistent failure, regression, and moral collapse. These discrepancies are not accidental. They are symptoms of a system that never had true universal care at its heart. See, that's where I disagree. You can't put a bone in front of a dog and expect not to want it. You can train him and make him pretend to act a certain way, but at its core, that mofo wants the bone and he wants to get at it. I do think healthcare system was for the people by the people, but my gosh, corporate greed, it's inevitable. And this isn't just healthcare insurance companies. This is pharmaceutical industry. This is any financial interest will take over and motives will change. Observe more closely. That bedside is now crowded by administrators, insurance adjusters, corporate attorneys, and pharmaceutical representatives. The doctors stand here to be sure, but they are outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and often overshadowed by the intricate lattice of profit-oriented bureaucracy that defines the modern medical world. When the patient cries out in pain and seeks relief, the response that returns to them is not simply that of a healer ready to help, but of a cost-benefit analysis weighing whether their suffering is worth alleviating given the balance sheets. Tell me that's not true. We are told that competitive markets improve quality and lower costs. This is a refrain of our times, the economic dogma that has been allowed to infiltrate even our perception of the sanity of human life. But if competition were truly the engine of improvement, why do we witness skyrocketing prices for common drugs that have existed for decades? Why do hospitals close in rural areas, leaving entire regions bereft of care for hours around simply because the population density is too low to justify investor interest? Why do insurers find convoluted ways to deny claims, to pile up obscure terms and conditions, all to ensure that the profit margin remains robust? Why are health insurance companies allowed to be the own arbiter as to whether or not they are responsible for paying for your healthcare insurance? Registered nurses on the other line, not all healthcare insurance companies, but many of them practice an act of having a nurse be the one that reads your medical doctors and even surgeons sometimes their pre-authorizations and submissions for request for care. And they're the ones that decide whether or not it's actually allowed, whether it's medically necessary. Your doctors don't get to decide what's medically necessary for you. What kind of bullshit is that? A system designed to fail. It is a mistake to call our healthcare system broken. To do so would suggest it once functioned well and now falters by accident. You know how I feel. I think it did function with good intention at one point, but this system was never designed to safeguard the health of the many. It was engineered with the aim of financial gain for the few. It is a labyrinth deliberately constructed of administrative barriers, complicated billing practices, and legal complexities. This is not an unintended, this is a blueprint. Bureaucracy swallows countless billions that could have built hospitals, funded research into neglected diseases, or delivered treatments to remote regions. Instead, those billions vanish into the machinery of profit, into ever-expanding layers of management and red tape. Insurance companies have become medical gatekeepers, wielding outsized power over decisions that rightfully belong to physicians, caregivers, and patients themselves. With every referral, every denied claim, every inflated cost for a pill that costs pennies to manufacture, they tighten the noose around public health. The apparatus is designed to confuse and exhaust patients until they simply give up, accepting substandard care or crushing debt. It is a system that counts on resignation, on the quiet despair of individuals who lack the means to fight back. I have watched this unfold from the inside. I have seen the endless cycles of pre-approvals, the letters informing patients that their treatment, no matter how necessary, how urgently prescribed by their physicians, is not covered. I have witnessed patients be told that their life-saving procedures must wait until an elusive committee of cost analysis determines whether their expenses holds sufficient monetary value. I have seen healthcare institutions gleefully profit off of human pain, turning patients into revenue streams rather than human beings in need. I can't even read this. And maybe because as the business owner myself, struggling with it, one thing that came to my mind as I'm reading this, many chiropractors, physical therapists, like we don't even bother billing insurance. Number one, deductibles are so damn high. Number two, we don't have the capacity to afford to pay for the person that would need to be on the phones all day to get the approval to begin with. So many chiropractors and physical therapists just end up charging cash. They can't afford to run their business. This is why medical doctors are stuck seeing a massive amount of patients. Reimbursements drop. Doctors are forced to see more patients just to make a living. They can't fight these claims. Many times they just give up. Every abstract policy, every line of fine print in an insurance contract has a human face attached. Behind these faceless mechanisms are real lives unraveling. Families teetering on the bank of financial ruin because they dare to seek help for a sick child. Elders ration their medications, cutting pills in half, skipping doses altogether, because the market demands a price that can mean the difference between eating and treating a chronic illness. The cruelty is not confined to one class. It spreads and infiltrates the very fabric of our communities. The supposed moral society allows these tragedies to go on day after day in plain sight. Meanwhile, at the summit of this colossal edifice of inequity, the executives of vast health conglomerates earn salaries and bonuses that dwarf the cost of entire medical wings. They dine lavishly, clicking glasses and celebrating their fiscal quarters, while just a few floors below, patients beg for help and healthcare workers struggle with understaffing and burnout. The irony is as obscene as it is deliberate. Some lives are prolonged with the best treatments money can buy. Others are cut short by conditions easily treated were it not for the cruelty of cost-based rationing. We pour billions into the development of groundbreaking drugs. We erect paywalls so high that only an unfortunate fraction of the patients will ever see them. The promise of modern medicine lies not only in its discoveries, but in its equitable distribution, a promise we have so brazenly betrayed. I have lost friends, good, hardworking individuals who slipped through the cracks because they could not afford the tests, the scams, the referrals. I have watched many families members endure humiliating phone calls, pleading with insurance representatives who could not care less about their plight. I have seen the despair etched into their faces as they realize their options have run dry. It is a quiet kind of torture, a slow, bitter death of hope and trust in a system that was supposed to provide solace, not suffering. How many of you can attest to this? How many of you have personally experienced these issues? A call to arms, a revolt against the status quo. Words alone are not enough. Actions, no matter how shocking, seem necessary to awaken a population lulled into accepting this desolation as normal. My manifesto is a desperate attempt to shake the foundations of the world that has allowed itself to be governed by heartless spreadsheets and corporate-led moral arithmetic. When I act, I do so in the name of humanity, not spite. It is not hatred that drives me, but the very opposite. Love for the people who have been betrayed, compassion for those who die unremarked and unmet within the shadows of this market-driven machine. Our current passivity has been the nourishing soul in which this vile system thrives. We must not only acknowledge the problem, but commit ourselves to radical systemic changes. The solution does not lie in half measures or superficial reforms, but in a complete reimagining of how we structure healthcare. We must strip the profit motive from medicine. We must eradicate the legal structures that allow insurance companies to profit on misery. We must demand transparency, accountability, and equity at every stage. Healthcare should be a public good, not a speculative venture. Look at the models around the world where universal coverage is not just a slogan, but a reality. Study the nations that refuse to let a single individual go untreated because of an inability to pay. Understand that this transformation is not a pipe dream, but an attainable goal, provided we have the courage to wrest power back from those who have proven time and again that they do not deserve our trust. We must demand that our leaders confront the issues head on, tearing down the frameworks that perpetuate healthcare inequality. We must push for policies that prioritize patient outcomes over corporate earnings. Look, I in no way, shape, or form condone anything that he did. What he did was awful. But the fact that an individual actually acted on this means how many people were thinking this? How many people wanted to do this? How many people didn't have the courage to do this because in their mind, this needed to be done? Please tell me a better solution. While the solution itself was not one I would have chose for, I'm sitting here scratching my head. What else could we have done? Is this even going to be the spark of change? Or is this going to be brushed to the side? He's crazy. None of it's true. Everyone's back to normal regimen. One last part, guys. My legacy and your responsibility. If my words and actions serve as a catalyst, if they speak a shift in your perspective or perhaps even a grand moment, then my life will not have been lived in vain. I have chosen this moment to speak my truth because I know that many others feel it too, but remain in silence, fearing repercussions, overwhelmed by the scale of catastrophe. Let me voice echo for them. Let it represent the countless silent sufferers who have not been allowed the dignity of proper care. I do not ask for your pity, nor do I seek your admiration. I do not want my name etched in stone as a martyr. Instead, I beg of you, scrutinize the system that calls itself healthcare. Look beyond the sensationalization that will inevitably surround my actions, spun up by media outlets that rely on shock value. Penetrate the veil and see the underlying disease. Question every assumption about why a pill costs hundreds of dollars, why a specialist is out of reach, and why an insurance claim can be denied with impunity. Challenge every premise that leads to the commodification of health. I hope that future generations might look back at this turbulent era and wonder how we tolerated such cruelty under the guise of care. I hope they will marvel at how we once let human beings suffer and die while wealth piled up at the top, and I hope they will praise the efforts of those who dared to resist. If what I do today contributes a small brick to the foundation of a new healthcare paradigm, one defined by equity, compassion, and universal access, then my role in the story is meaningful. This manifesto is my final testament, my earnest appeal to the conscious with the world that has grown too comfortable with moral contradictions. Let the cost of my sacrifice be not in vain. Let it serve to ignite a transformative discussion and, more importantly, real action. The world desperately needs a healthcare system that honors its name, a system that is centered on healing and grounded in love, not money. Through this plea, I offer you a choice. Continue to stand by as millions suffer, or join in building a legacy of decency, empathy, and genuine care. In raw desperation and with a sliver of hope. Okay, holy shit. I have so much to say. My brain goes a million places. I want to make it clear that I do not condone what he did. We can sit here and talk about the problems of what he did, why he did it, but does that really matter at this point? Because the reasons why, that's the problem. And that's what we should be talking about. Are you going to really sit here and tell me the man was crazy and none of what he talks about is true? Because if it is, that's a conversation and we should be talking about whether or not that stuff exists. But I think you must understand this all too well because most of you watching this have lived this yourself. Whether you're a doctor that has to struggle to make ends meet because you can't afford to bill insurance companies and pay for staffing, or even worse, for an individual who has suffered to receive the care. My heart goes out to the family of CEO of United Healthcare. But what about the family of the millions of people who are actively suffering and who are no longer suffering because they died, because they didn't receive the care that they need? What about those families? How come no one's talking about them? The media is so focused on him. And no one's talking about the actual problem. Still, I get really passionate about this topic because it is what fuels me. It is what motivates me to do what I do as an individual who has been working in the healthcare space for the last decade, helping people with holistic medicine and trying to provide solutions that reduce prescriptions, prevent surgeries, restore optimal health. When I first heard about this, I was like, holy shit, this is wild. Reading that manifesto and just hopefully it raises awareness at the actual problem. And yes, I agree. CEOs of other healthcare insurance companies, you should be concerned. I hope nothing happens to any of you. The message is clear. If my message can get out, maybe I can spark the change that would cause other people to not think they need to do what he did. Let that be my message, because I want to see more deaths. I don't think that was necessary, but I do think something needs to be done. I don't know what that is. I'm not the person that's going to come up with a solution, but I'm certainly going to speak my mind. And I'm certainly not afraid to let people know that you should also speak up. You should also be part of the change. Like anything, with more and more societal acceptance of the problem at hand and the pressure that comes from, that's the potential beginning of something different. Remember, the powers that be are supposed to be for the people, not to the people. It's clear that we lost that at some point, whether they want to pretend like it's completely there or not, and hope that with our new president coming into House and RFK being head of Health and Human Services and the new head of the FDA, change is coming. I think change is coming. Despite all that excitement and change that this happened, and the timing of that is really odd to me. Maybe he waited to do it when he found out. Now is the chance. Let me know what you guys think. If he timed it for that reason, I find it interesting that if change was ever going to happen in our history's last 40, 50 years, now this is it. This is the time for massive change in healthcare. There's people that are being given power that do care about you. At least to my belief, I believe they care less about corporate interests and more about humanity and healthcare. It will be very interesting to see the next several years unravel. All that I ask for all of you out there is take responsibility for your health, set an example for your loved ones by getting healthy. Don't let yourself become victims of the system, because it is the people that ultimately become more unhealthy that are the ones that get screwed more and more by the healthcare system itself. Some of you have genetic conditions that are completely out of your control. But for the ones that don't have genetic issues, you do have a lot of ability to contribute to your healthcare. And putting effort to preventative healthcare, making better dietary choices, eating less processed foods, intermittent fasting, lifting heavy weights, getting sunlight in the morning, trying to respect your sleep, trying to avoid toxic chemicals, living an inflammation-controlled lifestyle, educating yourself, not trusting everything that you hear. If you can incorporate these things, you can protect yourself from a system that I'm crossing my fingers is going to change. I hope it's going to change. I expect it to change. But just in case it takes a while, you have an opportunity to not be one of the people that's impacted by just taking ownership into your health. We'll see you guys later.
There's nothing worse than seeing a patient just like you starting these GLP-1 medications and end up short of your weight loss goals. How much better would you feel about your journey if you are consistently making progress the entire time, and more importantly, saving a ton of money by not needing as much of the GLP-1 medications? I have the answer for you to achieve lasting weight loss and save money on your GLP-1s in the long run.